everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Consummate Athlete Podcast. This is sort of a mini episode here where we're going to tackle one of the topics that we get asked about a lot, which is active travel. Since we spend most of our time on the road at this point, I'd say, sometimes it's hard to have a really specific training plan or training routine, which is both a blessing and a curse, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge for both of us to keep things moving ahead and, maintain our work life, but then also some sort of activity, right? And whether that's training towards a specific goal or just sort of staying healthy and active and sane. It's an important component of travel, I think, to keep moving, and I think fits well into our consummate athlete lifestyle because being a consummate athlete opens up a lot of opportunities to move differently and use your surroundings.
Exactly. Actually, think about you maybe like 5 or 6 years ago. If you'd been doing this much travel without your bike, I feel like you would have been in a bit of a panic.
Well, it's definitely hard, and that gets into the debate of elite athletics, and, that's a slightly different scenario. But that said, I remember I think I've told this story maybe before in the podcast, but to you definitely, we were at a World Cup in Austria, and our wheels, we had to send them with this random Belgian van they looked so sketchy, but Sandra Walter said she knew them, so it was me and Eric Batty, and we sent all our wheels. There was like 12 wheels, and we sent them in this big Belgian thing. Never met the people. They seemed happy and jovial, but they disappeared with all these wheels, and we only had frames because we jammed them into like a little Audi or something we had rented. And we got there, and they didn't show up for 2 days, and we had heard nothing from them.
Oh,
but they just showed up and dropped our wheels off, had a beer outside their van, and then they disappeared again. And it was just, they were 2 days late, but they didn't say anything about it, and just disappeared. So anyhow, Eric and I ran the course, and Eric and I have gone on a lot of run adventures, but we had both stayed fairly run fit, and we hike/ran around the World Cup course, and that sort of kept us sane because we were moving. We were both a little hyperactive like that. But also we got to see the course, right? So we were basically pre-walking the course, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Which actually leads me to our first sort of point about active travel, which is, first and foremost, thinking about what's available and around. So in that case, you had a World Cup course and you had running shoes.
Mm-hmm.
So the option was pretty simple, right?
And the ability to run beforehand, right? Like, I'm not suggesting that anyone should just go and run around, especially off-road and stuff, especially if you have an important competition in cycling or otherwise coming up. But because we had that ability that we had practiced and, kept maintained, we were able to sort of thrive in whatever environment we were thrown into, right?
Yeah. So for us, when we travel now, we definitely look around at, like, are there, bike shares available? Can we borrow a bike from somebody? Are there any rock gyms or, like, places with rock climbing? I've looked at parkour classes. I've jumped into different yoga classes.
And I think that's where the consummate athlete lifestyle, the less elite lifestyle, I guess, becomes interesting with travel, is because if you sort of let go of that bike or whatever your sport is, and sort of be open to even just being complete beginner. You went to a parkour class.
Super weird.
We've been to a few salsa, and just, salsa was sort of the dancing that I at least wanted to go, and Molly came along. But then there's a couple places that weren't salsa, and we just sort of, okay, fine, we'll just try out, there's a ballroom class we did, and, we've been to rock climbing. We went rock climbing with a guide one time, and so just looking at what's available. That could be on Groupon, that could be actually just what's in the area as far as classes.
Groupon is awesome for that, actually. Super good.
I think it gives you some ideas, at least. I don't think you always have to be super frugal with it, but definitely that's something where they have like an outdoor adventures thing, and you can go and check that out.
Yeah. The other thing to look at too is obviously wherever you are, bring the map and like kind of zoom out to see how close there are any parks, any trails, anything like that that's nearby. I've definitely made the mistake of like being at a hotel, going for a run basically like through industrial parking lots for like an hour, got back only to find that Peter was back after having shredded in the woods for an hour because he went in the other direction into the park that had tons of sweet trails.
Yeah, definitely asking around, and that's a good chance to network and talk with people, which I think less and less we're into these days. But the more you talk to people, the more quicker you're going to end up with a local who shows you all the local running trails or whatever, takes you to a gym. Or in my case, we were in Colombia, and a bunch of people took us salsa dancing a couple nights, and that really started
The salsa obsession.
I guess my love of salsa, I don't know if I'd call it an obsession because we don't do it nearly enough,
No.
but that got me hooked on salsa, right? So who knows, one conversation could change, the path of what you're doing and lead to a lot of good times.
Yeah. The other thing I'll say is if you're staying in a hotel, I'd say one of the first things we do anymore is check out what the gym setup is. I mean, a lot of hotels, it's pretty lame. There's like a treadmill and an elliptical and like maybe a Bowflex.
Yeah, and we'll link to my Anywhere core routine, which I have up on YouTube. You can see me moving around and doing some pretty basic stuff, with weight or with a very light weight, maybe even just your suitcase or something. So I have a lot of my clients start with that even when they're at home, and then that way we have this sort of little routine with, say, 10 movements, but you can exclude or add movements based on what you have. But having that base routine at least lets you go into this room, and we've had ones that are just rooms, like exercise rooms, with a broken
really
treadmill
bizarre.
maybe, or like an exercise mat. And then you go in there and you're not bummed. It's just that's the context you have to do some sort of movement, right? And that's where more of the calisthenic, the gymnastics style stuff might play in.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing you can do if you're staying at a hotel, though, is ask them if they have a membership thing with a local gym. Because we've been at a couple now where they have free passes.
Iowa, I think, was where we ran? Or
I think it was Iowa.
Yeah, so we actually ran. Actually, it was a pretty considerable run. I think I was really in pain after. But we ran up through the city, and we linked a couple paths on the way up and down, I think, and then hit this really, really nice gym. They had an Aerodyne machine, which I did intervals on, so it's like a bicycle with handles, which is popular in the CrossFit world now, but is one of the most awesome yet
terrible
machines. And Molly did some strength. We did a strength routine together, and then we ran home. So we made.
We also hung out in the steam rooms and the respective locker rooms.
Finished with some sauna, and then so then we ran home. So that made for a really exciting day. We got lots of movement in, saw some of the city, and then on top of that, actually that same day we went ice skating in a mall nearby because we figured out that there was ice skating. So Molly actually got one of her, I don't want to say her first, but maybe her first lesson.
Yeah, definitely my first ice skating lesson. I've been ice skating before.
So yeah, looking around, I think. So I had a question for Molly, and I wanted to know, can you think of something under $50 that's sort of the best gear you've added recently as far as traveling goes?
Actually, I can, and I admit I haven't done a lot with it yet, but I'm pretty excited about it for the season. I actually just got a couple bands. So resistance bands, basically, for sort of doing a bunch of different movements with them. I mean, the Anywhere strength is great, and obviously I don't want to carry weights with me. Last year I actually did carry the little tiny running weights because I was doing some running with weights.
She loves Ronda Rousey.
I love Ronda Rousey, and she runs with weights, so I tried running with weights. It was pretty mean girls of me, but totally worth it. I thought they were great, but they do take up like 4 pounds of a 50-pound bag. And my bags are notoriously overweight, so...
You could also just get cans of soup or something and just put those in your hands.
That's a really hard run, though, with a can of soup.
Oh, no, it's like a shake weight.
Oh, that sounds awful. But, no, I really like these resistance bands. I've done a couple little workouts with them, and they can sort of also do that voodoo wrapping thing that Peter's super into for...
Now we're going to have to link to voodoo wrapping.
Now we're going to have to link to voodoo wrapping, I'm sorry.
Now... You got more like a TheraBand.
Yeah.
Saying. So it's more of a thin elastic band?
It's like maybe 3 or 4 inches thick.
But it doesn't loop in on itself. It's just like a ribbon, basically.
Just a ribbon, yeah.
Okay. So yeah, those are good. And a lot of people can use that, like your traditional therapy things, like external rotation, just some basic rows to set those shoulders back. Molly does a lot of riding and all those sort of movements, and which we all do. And so just even having that band to do a little bit of pulling those shoulders back is pretty therapeutic. And you could do that anywhere. You could do that on a bus if you had to, if you were spending time on a bus. So we'll link to the bands Molly has. That's a good idea. I think mine, honestly, was Molly got me this toothbrush holder. I'm really paranoid about my toothbrush. And so it's this little dog head, basically. It's like a plastic dog head. And it sticks to the mirror or whatever you want to. But it covers the head of the toothbrush. And I don't even know. It probably was a dollar store thing.
Yeah, it was.
And
I'm going to point out that's not active travel. That's just travel, but still totally
I think
reasonable.
it relates only because you need to stay healthy. Mm-hmm. And that's the challenge of any travel. And then also to stay active, right? So, a toothbrush cover is what I'm going to go with.
I like it. I like it a lot. I will say then, if we're gonna go into that, my other stay healthy thing is I have these little sprays by I think Urban Moonshine. It's digestive bitters, and I traveled with that a bunch because I found when we were flying to Belgium a bunch, my stomach would just be kind of rocky when we got there. But using that sort of helped soothe it a little, which also makes being active a lot easier when your stomach isn't in pain most of the time. So those were really great for me. So speaking of Europe, I will say the other thing we definitely did a lot. I mean, both when we were in Ireland for fun, and then when we've been over in the Netherlands and Belgium for work, has been we walk everywhere when we're somewhere new.
I think it's a good rule of thumb for your entire life.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
definitely, I think when we get away traveling, people are very quick to rent a car or get on a bus or call a taxi. But it's worth looking at like how crazy is the walk to wherever you're going or part of the way you're going. It might be taking a subway somewhere and then walking instead of getting on a bus or calling a taxi or waiting for a ride. But the more you walk, which is something we try to encourage, and I encourage with my coaching clients, no matter what their sport is, what their goal is really. But using walking in your own sort of power, that could be a run, hike, run, walk. But you can really see some cool stuff. Some of the stuff you can see on your own 2 feet is pretty cool, and you save money.
Absolutely. Yeah, it sort of combines your sightseeing, your workout, your money saving. It's pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been one of our biggest things, and it's even better when you can then add in going grocery shopping or something, so you walk back with a massive weighted sack, which is always fun. And then I guess like the last thing that's sort of my if all else fails / a lot of the time when we're traveling, we're working, so it's super busy. There's just often not a ton of time to actually do a whole lot of activity. So for me, it's either that anywhere core type stuff, or I do, really short runs. Like I try to just think about it like even 15 minutes out, 20 minutes out is better than nothing, and it wakes me up in a way that I just wouldn't feel as, peppy if I didn't get out and do it.
And it's funny with a lot of travel, we all want to go and do some sort of crazy intervals or, something really hard. But a lot of times what you really need is just, something like that core, a little bit of strength that's been pretty proven to help with circadian rhythms and adapting to travel and sort of getting grounded, so to speak. But also just that walk to sort of decompress. And Molly talked about the digestive bitters and sort of trouble eating. Like, honestly, I think for a lot of us, just taking a 20-minute walk where we breathe deeply, get into some nature, probably would really make that digestion and that first meal or first major meal a little easier.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll do that, and the last thing I'll do is I try really hard to do just 5 minutes of yoga every day pretty much, and I can be kind of bad about it sometimes, but usually I get back to it, and it really helps in the morning, I think, just sort of set me up for having a good day.
Especially if you're traveling for work or, even with family and stuff, it gets really hectic usually. If you're at Disneyland or something like this, like it's a full day. So taking, even if you have to wake up, I think 5 minutes early and taking, that sort of a meditative, just like stop and think, stop and breathe, stop and, you've moved through some range of motion before you start the day is I think a good call. And again, it sort of keeps your sanity and, keeps everything working relatively well, hopefully, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Did you have any other travel stuff? Are you at the end of your list?
I think I'm at the end of my list.
Okay.
What do you have?
I have some more rapid fire questions.
All right.
Can you think of something that, say 3 years ago or before we even started hanging out together that you did while traveling that now you think to be stupid?
I would really love to say, oh, I used to pack so much and now I travel with this tiny little carry-on and I'm so efficient and capsule wardrobe. That's not true at all. I'm lying. I don't think I've actually been in an airport where they haven't been like, your bag is overweight by like 10 pounds.
Quite embarrassing.
Yeah, it's super awkward. Like, I'm that person that's like opening their bag and like taking stuff out and trying to cram it into their carry-on. It's really embarrassing. It's my goal this season to get better with that, though. Peter saw it. I have a laminated packing list now, so...
It'll make all the difference.
It'll make all the difference.
She keeps pulling it out when we're going somewhere for, an hour. We're going to a coffee shop, and she pulls out this laminated packing.
Well, I need 7 pairs of pants.
I'm not sure what kind of coffee shop we're going to.
How about you? What did you stop doing?
Honestly, what I stopped doing, and I'm really bitter, I think the Molly packs too much at airports, and I get really upset and bitter about stuff, but I think I've become more comfortable in airports. As you go through, you just sort of get used to the hurry up and wait. But the one thing I've stopped doing that a lot of people really think is important is the pre-check-in, the like I just go there and I argue with the people about why I'm talking to the computer when I should just go talk to the people at the stand. And because it always seems that no matter what you do, you end up having to stand in the line to talk to the people. And so that's what I've stopped doing. I've stopped stressing about checking in early.
I feel like you learned that from me because I never do pre-check-in.
Yeah, I don't know, but that's my opinion. But yeah, I don't think checking in early is always good. If you have sort of a small, obscure flight and you need to get your bike where you're going, then maybe check in early and make sure you get your bike registered. But I don't know. I just feel like that's the oddest thing in an airport, and you can't get frustrated about it, which is probably my better advice is to just use that as
out.
Meditative time, sit quietly, and when someone opens the gate and tells you can go, you run for all you're worth. And then you sort of relax and really sort of chill out.
So it's like airport intervals.
Yeah, and really focusing on really letting yourself come down and like be centered when you're standing there, wherever you're standing. Because you're going to stand and wait, and if you get ready for that, I think that's the biggest thing. So I think what I stopped doing was getting too worried about 10 steps down the road and just focused on, okay, I need to get my bags from the bus into the airport. Okay, where is the Air Canada check-in? Okay, why is this lady telling me to talk to the computer? Okay, I'll talk to the computer. And then, okay, the computer didn't work. I'm going to stand in the line. Okay, now I'm at the front. And then we're, next is the oversize or whatever it is. So just focused on that next step very much with travel and not getting stressed about, oh, I'm going to miss my flight. It'll be fun.
Oh, and also if you're going to sneak CO2s, put them somewhere where you know exactly where they are and how to get to them. Because, like, I'd say 50% of the time, they will find them when they x-ray your bike bag, and you will have to remove them. And it sucks when you have to go through the entire bag. Better advice, don't bring them.
So is that something that you stopped doing or changing your approach to?
You say that like I've ever brought CO2 cartridges.
I guess you've never, because it's more of a mountain biker thing, I guess.
Yeah. Pumps for life, all right? That's where I'm at.
So the key to getting them through the x-ray is that you have to wrap them in as much metal as you can. So what I usually do is I take them all out and disconnect the heads is another thing. You don't want to lose the head to the CO2 inflator. But then you wrap them with chains, if you have spare chains, or like your pedals, and you put them all in a bag, and as Molly says, if you can put it closer to like a top so that when they rip your thing open to try and get them, you can say like, no, the bag's right here. But yeah, wrapping it in metal usually, and I don't want to like encourage anyone to bring illegal things on planes.
No, you shouldn't bring them. It's easier
but
to
if
just
you
don't
put
bring
all
them.
that inside a hockey bag, it's free and they think it's hockey equipment, so you'll be fine. So now that we've gotten all that out of the way, those are good travel tips. Giant hockey bags. I can link to the giant hockey bag too.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll put that in the show notes for the giant hockey bag you can fit your bike in. We could call that a Canadian secret, maybe. I don't know. You don't see it in the U.S. as much.
No, because we don't have hockey bags.
Yeah, for some reason our airlines, I don't know, for some reason, it's obvious why we have the reason, but hockey bags fly for free almost. They don't even care what's in them. As long as it's a hockey bag, it'll pretty much fly for free. As long as you can keep the weight down. So. I'm trying to think what else here. Do you have any go-to workouts when you're traveling?
I've told you.
Like actual workout routine though. Can you describe? Like when you run, do you just run or do you have...
Oh, I just run. Yeah.
You don't do intervals or anything?
Yeah, we're going to cover this in an upcoming Q&A episode, I think.
Yeah, we got some good questions about interval training and sort of easing into intervals.
But
the one I give, so if you're a cyclist, a lot of our listeners are, and you don't have your bike, and I'm not big on the exercise bikes. They usually suck in hotel rooms or aren't there anyhow. So what I usually have people do is walk on the treadmill with a steep gradient on it. And for a lot of my business people, clients, this really challenges their calf mobility. So you got to ease into it and make sure you don't go crazy with it. But usually just walking on a steep treadmill is a pretty good stimulus. Again, you're walking, if the weather's not great, it's good, but you can definitely get your heart rate up doing that. And once they've gotten a couple of those in, we'll start adding some short runs at a steep elevation, so sort of like they're running uphill. And again, the speed doesn't have to get too high, and they're sort of stepping up, so the actual loading, the actual soreness potential, we'll call it, isn't quite as high. So that's one thing you can definitely do, and it doesn't take much. It's 3 or 4 accelerations, and you're probably good.
Yeah. Cool. And I think the last thing I want to touch on, we didn't yet, is eating. Eating well while actively traveling.
Sure.
I know is always sort of brutal for I mean, anyone that's traveling for business, anything like that. Especially when you're staying at a Holiday Inn Express and they have those delicious cinnamon rolls. So good. But I think, our main thing comes back to trying to cook or put together, like, prepare our own stuff as much as we can. And, when we have to go out, aiming for the healthier options. But when we can stay at home and cook, definitely staying in. I know when we were in Ireland, we stayed at an Airbnb, like at a guy's house with him in the house. And I think we just perplexed him so much because we were always just in the house cooking. I don't think he had a lot of people that did that.
No, and definitely having that sort of basic sort of cooking strategy is good. We really like our hot plate, and we travel with that a lot for the hotels. But in lieu of that, a lot of times what we'll do is just go to any grocery store and get 2 clamshells of spinach, and then some...
like those little plastic ones where it's sort of its own bowl.
And in the U.S., like, there's Walmarts now have fairly good stuff. But, there's so many Trader Joe's and Whole Foods and everything else. So
Whole Foods is great if you are okay spending the money, but...
It's true, but I mean, for a roasted chicken and 2 clamshells of spinach and whatever, it's not much, if any, different than going out, but everyone can pick exactly the food they want. You're not concerned about how they cooked it or what's in it or whatever, and, their wine's $1.99, so we're already ahead by not having to buy wine in the restaurant.
You can each have a bottle, although that sort of goes against the healthy part.
Yeah, maybe ease through that.
But yeah, absolutely. I think the big salad with, chicken and then avocado, pepper. We'll sometimes do, we'll grab like balsamic vinegar, or usually at like Whole Foods and stuff, they even have some of that stuff just sitting out in their eating section.
Sure.
Or I will occasionally steal packets of things like that from restaurants and keep them in a kit.
Yep, and then it's getting easier and easier, honestly. When I started going down south, I remember the whole drive down, there was barely anything to stop at, and now between your Starbucks, your Chipotle, your, what's the salad place called? Panera Bread. There's a lot of options, and you can get a salad, essentially what we're describing, that's relatively good quality and pre-made, if that's what you're into.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think just going into it with the mindset of like not going to eat crappy the whole time really helps, because I think it's really easy to be like, well, we're traveling, so...
It was interesting in Vegas last year. We were there for Interbike and the Cross Vegas, and so we were up early every morning at like 6:30, and we would just go to a Starbucks to get coffee, but we had our food bag, and we would usually do, I'm trying to remember, I think you got oatmeal a lot of the time. We do a bit of oatmeal.
We had hard-boiled eggs from Trader Joe's in our food bag.
Yeah, we must have had a fridge or something, and so we had gotten hard-boiled eggs from Trader Joe's, but a lot of the grocery stores now have hard-boiled eggs you can buy. And then we combine that. I think I was probably having some salad or sardines or something.
Yeah, you had
disgusting
some weird stuff
that we're doing on the down low in the middle of a casino in Vegas by a Starbucks. But, not our highest moment, but there's definitely things you can do to make sure that there's a bit of nutrition coming in, right? And that's, again, having a bit of green stuff that'll stay, okay in a cool hotel room, like a pepper or whatever. And you might just have to eat that pepper like it's an apple.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Get ready to be weird, but it's fine. Yeah, I think that pretty much covers our best advice for actively traveling and staying reasonably healthy, reasonably fit, and reasonably active while you're on the road.
So if you guys like this, we'd love to do more sort of Q&As or travel tips or different things like that. So definitely comment on this post on consummateathlete.com. You can see the show notes there, or just hit Molly or I on Twitter. That's at Peter Glassford
and at Molly J. Herford, and let us know if you guys have any other travel tips or ways you stay active while you're on the road. And as always, we will see you next time. Thanks so much for tuning in.